The puns keep on coming, right? Taking out the trash, getting rid of the garbage, Donald Trump making hay out of all this trash talk, shall we say, like only he can. And by the way, it's resonating. It's resonating so much so that we got new poll numbers and a new poll warning to talk about. Donald Trump really know-howing to seize the moment, and the base is reacting.
Oh my gosh, first we're deplorables and now we're garbage? No way. We are the heartbeat of America.
You bet you are. Heartbeat of America. Americans not taken so well to the idea that half the country could be called garbage. I mean, I said this yesterday. It's almost as though Joe Biden wants Donald Trump to win. I mean, how else could you come out with that one? Really and truly. I mean, it all goes back to the original joke, right? The original joke that you've heard by now that, kind of fell flat and they tried to run with.
Going on. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right.
Okay, so that was the original joke. And then Biden had this brilliant idea that during Kamala's big speech, he would go on and do this other media appearance. So he's on the Zoom call and he starts talking about Donald Trump supporters being total garbage. So, of course, Donald Trump, being the showman that he is, he dons the orange vest.
Hello, everybody. This is Donald Trump, and 250 million people are not garbage.
No, they're not. They're not garbage. And just to prove it, he drove a garbage truck.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Yes. And so the New York Post had some fun with it, coming out just last night. Trump takes out the trash. In New York Post, you can't beat him. And then today's cover, I got to show you this too. Dumpster fire. That's probably what we should have titled this show, right? Dumpster fire. I mean, wow, 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 wow. So a fair amount here. I mean, look, this is not unusual. As you heard the woman tell Fox earlier, this is what they think of us, right? I mean, first you were deplorable, then you were a Nazi and a racist, by the way, and a sexist. Don't forget. And now you are just plain old garbage. I mean, tell us how you really feel, guys. Well, given that we live in a new day and age, given that there is a lot of activity online, given that people don't really appreciate being called garbage, they're having some fun with it, okay? So this is one of the memes that I saw. Here's another one, because, I always loved Oscar the Grouch on Sesame Street with his MAGA hat. Look, we can laugh about it, but the reality is it's starting to affect the polls because, once again, Trump proving that he has more in common with everyday people than the elites that are running this country. And that was really abundant when he kind of had some self-deprecating humor there on stage last night.
And then I got in the car and I'm driving over here and I have this still on. And I come into the arena and I say, "Where's my jacket? I want to get out of this thing." And they said, "It would be unbelievable if you could wear it on stage." I said, and I said, "No way. I got 25,000 people standing outside. I got all these people here. There's no way I'm wearing it on stage." They said, "Oh, okay, sir." I said, "Get me my jacket. But if you did, it actually makes you look thinner." I said, and they got me. I said, "I want to wear it on stage." But they said I look thinner. I said, "In that case, I'll wear it on stage." I may never wear a blue jacket again. I may go in this. I said that was my...
Listen, his ability to do that is really remarkable. Can you imagine Kamala saying anything quite as funny? No, because she takes herself too damn seriously. Look, take the country seriously, please. Take our economy seriously. Take our border seriously. Take our international strife seriously. But occasionally, Kamala, it might be nice if you could be a little bit self-deprecating yourself instead of telling us how totally perfect you are all the time. All right, remember the other night when she was asked, well, what is your biggest flaw? And she kind of answered it with a compliment to herself. It's like, okay, we've been there, done that, seen that already. Surprise us. Be a little bit more authentic. That's what Donald Trump has going for him and continues to have going for him. And as we look at these numbers right now, I'm going to share with you the latest polls. And Nate Silver's warning for the Kamala team, I think there's a really good shot he's going to take this. I really, really do. Quick word from one of our sponsors. Look, gold's been climbing. I actually bought some more today because I think it was down slightly. And I'm a big believer in diversification and a big believer that inflation is going to be here, whether we like it or not. And one of my best ways to diversify is through gold. So it's one of the reasons I buy gold. I encourage you to give the folks over at American Hartford Gold a call. They're a sponsor of the Trish Regan Show, and they have up to $15,000 for viewers of the Trish Regan Show right now in free silver. In fairness, I also bought some silver today too. So I just want to be transparent, but up to $15,000 worth of free silver. You can text Trish to them right now to find out more about the special offer. Just text my name to 65532. Text Trish, my name, to 65532 or call them at 1-844-495-1115. You can also go to trishlovesgold.com. I do. And by the way, I don't want to brag, but look, I have predicted this, have I not? Right? I mean, if you were watching this show back in August of 2020, and I was like, wow, this inflation is out of control. And that was when Trump was president, by the way. But you know what? He was issuing all those stimulus checks, all that stimmy money. You had Jerome Powell desperate to print as much money as he could. And then that continued with Biden's third stimulus check. And then Kamala's Inflation Reduction Act that led to massive inflation everywhere. So you get the picture. A lot of inflation means you want to have something else to help protect the purchasing power of your dollars. So for me, it's gold. Text Trish to 65532 or go to trishlovesgold.com. There is an anchor over on the CBS Evening News. She does the big signature 22-minute show every night that's so tightly wound and tightly scripted. And I can say that to you because I used to work there. Right? So I remember you get 10 seconds for your live tag. God help you if you went 11 or 12. The producer would be calling you up, Trish, what did you do? It's like, I don't know. I took a breath. Everything was so scripted and everybody's so tightly wound. Well, they don't like Donald Trump over at CBS News. You may have picked up on that along the way, maybe in some of those 60 Minutes interviews with Kamala that they made her look so good in, right? Everybody's upset about the editing there that went down. Well, they had a reaction to some of the trash talk. And if you ask me, this anchor, and gosh, I want to like her. She's Irish, I'm simple. I want to like her. But I'm listening to this and I'm like, everything is so scripted. And they don't seem too happy with Donald Trump making a lot out of the trash talk. I'm sorry, lady. This is politics. And we're in the final stretch. What do you think? Watch.
We are now 6 days out from Election Day. Nearly 60 million votes have already been cast in early in-person voting and through the mail. And the latest polls suggest the race could not be tighter. Both campaigns are locking their focus on the battleground states. Vice President Kamala Harris rallied in North Carolina and Pennsylvania today and is in Wisconsin tonight. Former President Donald Trump was in North Carolina earlier and tonight is also in Wisconsin. He landed in Green Bay just a short time ago and then pulled this campaign stunt, speaking to reporters from a garbage truck, proof that he and his supporters are giving no grace to a gaffe by
no grace. Stunt, no grace.
President Biden, where he and his
just a gaffe by President Biden. I mean, calling half the country garbage, that's just a gaffe.
Explanation inadvertently called Trump supporters garbage. This, of course, was in response to that racist joke about floating garbage told at a Trump rally just last weekend. Vice President Harris is distancing herself from the negativity and trying to drive home her unifying message that if elected, she will represent all Americans.
Oh, my goodness. And trying to send home her unifying message. Oh, my goodness. So I'm going to remind you how tightly wound this show is, right? Because you can't go beyond the 22 minutes and maybe 19 seconds that they give you for the entire thing. All the commercials are in there ahead of time. All the scripts are in there ahead of time. They have a program that's designed to time everything out, and they will literally parse words down to the syllable, okay, so that you make sure that you are on time. That's why Nora reportedly has to rehearse first. She really likes to rehearse, and that was kind of an issue there, but can you blame her? I mean, you go 1 second over and it's game over. So she very, very specifically scripted this to be that way. I don't know if she scripted it or the producer scripted it, but it's clear they don't like him very much, right? And everything was directed at trying to make Kamala seem like the total hero and Trump seem like the evil villain because he dared to have the common good political sense to do this.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Yeah. You know what? I get it. You guys don't like the covers of the New York Post last night or today. No. You don't like this, right? It is a dumpster fire. That's exactly what it is right now. And I just don't know how she's going to pull out of this. I honestly don't. I think she was disliked to begin with. I think people resented the fact that they put in this woman out of thin air after Democrats had already elected Joe Biden. I think they resented the party for not giving them more of a heads up. I mean, the logical thing to have done, would it not have been, was to get rid of Joe Biden ages ago so that you would have properly primaried him. And, well, he shouldn't have even been in it. Right? You could have primaried him, but you probably just didn't want him in it. It's kind of like the Carter thing all over again. Right? I mean, they put Ted Kennedy out there, and the primary didn't go that well, maybe to expose some of Carter's flaws, but Carter couldn't win that thing. And Reagan came in, he swooped in, and it was massive. Just massive. And you could actually start to see the same thing again. You really could. By the way, happy Halloween. See, I got my costume. I'm all ready to go. I'm Catwoman every year. I just drag out a black dress and have a little mask, and I'll be all set. Are you guys going trick-or-treating? I got to get candy and stuff ready for the kids a little bit later. But yeah, I should branch out. I've occasionally thought about Wonder Woman. But, I just keep coming back to the Catwoman thing. It's easy, right? It's really easy. Anyway, I digress. Voters right now, are mad. They're very, very mad. And so I think there's some fear in the White House that they may have really screwed up. It really is that deplorable moment. A lot of people would pinpoint Hillary Clinton calling half the country Trump supporters deplorables as racist, sexist, this, that, and the other, as the moment in time when she really and truly lost the election. In other words, that was a low point. That was a low point. We played the sound yesterday. I don't need to play it again, but you remember it. You remember it quite well. So Kamala hasn't quite said this, but having Joe say it for her, I think speaks volumes because he is the president right now and she is the vice president. So as such, what are we to think that these people think of us? Voters are indicating over and over again, let me play this for you, exactly what they think. Here's a voter on Fox News earlier today.
You saw those comments from Joe Biden.
Well, I thought that was a bunch of garbage is what I thought. I thought, oh my gosh, first we're deplorables and now we're garbage. No way. We are the heartbeat of America. We are the United States of America. We are the patriots. We need to get Trump back in office is what I thought.
Well said.
Yeah, so that's a sensibility you're seeing more of. And when you think about the dumpster fire that is right now, it's quite significant. Biden's out there trying to cover it up however he can. He issued a statement on Twitter. The White House is like, he didn't really mean it. Kamala Harris was asked about it. She didn't come out and forcefully condemn it. She just said, oh, well, this is what he meant. And he already clarified his statements. So they're trying to pretend he didn't say it altogether because why? They know this is a big freaking deal. They know that this is a 5-alarm fire. They know that they need a cleanup in aisle 5. This is great. I want you to hear this analyst talking about how significant this is for the Kamala Harris campaign and how stressed they are.
That all happened around 7:30 East Coast time. 2 hours later, around 9:31 p.m., Biden tried cleaning it up in this tweet on X. Quote, earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at that rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. End tweet. Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. Tom, we brought you on yesterday to talk about something entirely different, but this is front page for the moment. How do you think it plays, and who does what with it, do you think?
Well, it's obviously not great for the Harris campaign, just as, Trump battled a couple of days of bad news cycles. And this couldn't come at a worse time. I mean, it happened while she was speaking, while she was giving her closing argument. This entire thing blew up, which begs the question, what was Joe Biden even doing on a Zoom call at that point in time? And again, it reinforces this notion. And we've seen these comments, Hillary Clinton's deplorables in 2016. Obama clinging to guns, in 2012 or 2008, whenever that was. And it reinforces the idea that Democrats, they've just spent a couple of days calling Trump supporters Nazis for being at this rally, that they're alienating, voters that they're going to need in these swing states here in the final week.
Yeah. And you can't do that. Okay. You just can't do that. You need every stinking vote you can get. And so if you're someone who's in the middle who maybe voted for Biden last time around, and now you hear him talking about you because maybe you're thinking about voting for Trump as garbage, I think you're going to double down on voting for Trump. I mean, and we're seeing this reflected, guys, in the new polls. New polls out today. And a new warning, effectively, from a key pollster for Kamala Harris and her team. Take a look at Nate Silver's data here. I want you to see this because this is really, really remarkable. Okay, so Nate is super smart, and Nate has a really, really good set of data that he looks at. One of the reasons I like Nate's stuff is because he puts a lot, not just the polls in there, but he'll put some economic statistics and stuff. It's almost more like a financial model than what you typically see from, say, Real Clear Politics, et cetera, which have a more narrow spread. But you look at this 53.4% to 46.2%. This is a warning for Kamala Harris. Granted, anything can happen, and it is still relatively tight, but he's ahead, and he crossed ahead of her sometime around October 13th, October 14th. The last time we really saw him this much ahead, it was actually prior to the debate, or you could go back, way back, right? Back to the days when Biden was still running. And it was in part because of Nate's data that the Democrats were like, oh my gosh, we can't run him. We can't run him. Look at what's happening. He's imploding. In Nate Silver's forecast. So Nate used to run 538. ABC News runs that. So they have a slightly different view of things. But I think this is important to look at. I take it pretty seriously. Let's go a little bit deeper. So looking here at what Nate is putting forward, let me just fix the shot a little bit so you can see this better. You've got Harris, again, at 46.2%, Trump at 53.4%. I should point out, this is the Electoral College probability. The expectation is, yes, that Harris is going to win the popular vote. 74.6% chance of winning the popular vote versus Trump at 25.4%. But that's not how the system works. Right? Because otherwise New York and California would dictate everything. So that's not how the system works. The Electoral College is ultimately what matters. And so it's that path to 270. And you can see that the chances of getting to 270 are remarkably, well, not remarkably, but considerably, I should say, higher right now for Donald Trump. Of course, when you look at some of the poly market data and some of the betting market data, and not just poly market, by the way, there are other prediction data points out there that I was looking at earlier this morning before coming on. And what I'm seeing again is that 60-40 scenario. It's a little more favorable to him, around 65% at poly market. But in other prediction markets, you are seeing that he's consistently significantly ahead of her, and more ahead than, say, a Nate Silver's prediction model. And part of the reason for that is, well, people are putting money down, right? So they have money that they're putting to work, and it takes out some of the flaws that you might get in typical polling data. I mean, prediction markets have only been wrong twice since 1866. So those are really worth looking at too. I think bottom line is that she's going to have a really uphill battle between now and Tuesday. And then it's going to come down to who goes out and votes, who has already voted. We spoke with David Bossie on the campaign bus in Pennsylvania, and he was quite pleased because they had whittled down the gap that existed between Democrats and Republicans so significantly in the state of Pennsylvania by getting people out and registered early and voting early. We saw the same kind of thing going on in Virginia. I've looked at those numbers. It's incredible how much the Republicans have been able to pull ahead, and that matters. Now, they're not ahead in the early ballots. Democrats still have that game pretty much locked down, but it's significant that they're able to make this kind of an improvement, and I think quite telling, especially in light of the fact that Donald Trump underperforms in polls. For whatever reason, I think we know why, people are terrified to say, yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. And they're even more terrified, I think, when it's on a recorded line. Think about it. All these pollsters that are calling up and saying, well, I'm on a recorded line because we want to make sure that this is really, really accurate. And people are like, yeah, no, thank you. My vote is kind of a private thing. So a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I still come back to it's the economy, stupid. I still come back to the fact that you've got all this inflation. I was looking at some of the inflation in the swing states where it really matters, and you're looking at roughly around 20% inflation. Trust me, wages have not gone up 20% in that same amount of time. So people are having to do with a whole lot less, and they're angry and they're frustrated, and I think they're going to take it out on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden at the ballot booth, right? At the ballot box. That's where you're going to see it all come to light. Now, other things on the margin, like the trash talk, the garbage, that's not helping anything. And the White House knows it. KJP knows it. This is why KJP there was trying to spin in the spin room there at the White House just yesterday afternoon. But she was caught in another lie. What a job, right? What a terrible job. Your job is to lie. Well, we have this little thing called tape, so it's a little bit harder nowadays. Here we go.
Just address the president's comments yesterday, referring to Trump supporter as garbage.
A couple of things. So just to clarify, he was not calling Trump supporters garbage.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Which is why he put out, this is why he wanted to make sure that we put out a statement that clarified what he meant and what he was trying to say.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
And so just want to make that very clear for folks who are watching. And I just want to read that out to folks. So he was regarding to the comedian, and I quote, "I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage," which is the only word I can think of to describe it.
Okay, so she's trying to go with supporter. You see, we're talking supporter or supporters. You heard the quote. I heard an S on the end of that, and he was referring to them in the plural. So you can try and tell us it's singular, KJP, all you want all day long, but you are just lying and you just got caught.
His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at the rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. And to your question, your other question that you asked, no, he does not view Trump supporters or anybody who supports Trump as garbage. That is not what he views.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, by the way. Thank you to the Twittersphere for providing that for us. We got that off of Twitter, and it was a kind of a clever clip. But, you know, here she is saying, oh, he hates Latinos. He hates Latinos. Oh, you know, the Latino population certainly doesn't hate him. Take a look at that, 49%. This is according to a poll that came out around the 18th. We'll see if we can get some new polling data in on Latinos, but I think in general, Latinos have the same concerns that everybody else has, right? Same exact concerns. I want to give a shout out for our friends over at Heritage Foundation because, you know, we talk about all these lies. These guys have been the victim of a whole lot of lies at Heritage because they came up with something called Project 2025. And then all all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're reading in the newspaper, oh, this is Donald Trump's thing that he's doing in the back room with the heritage folks. I can tell you, it's not actually the case at all. The heritage folks did this one all on their own. And Trump very proudly was like, no, I got my ideas. And maybe there's some, simpatico, if you would. They're somewhat in sync with one another, but these were actually created entirely separately. But if you look at the mainstream media, you wouldn't know it. 25truth.org, that's where you should go. Let me change this to com. I think .com will get you there too, but 25truth.org. If you want to learn a little bit more, I think com will get you there as well, 25truth.com. But it tells you more about some of the things and the policies that they're looking at. For example, not going after one's political rivals. For example, making sure that we have a diversification in our energy policy. For example, dealing with our inflation. For example, trying to really roll up our sleeves and find a way to solve the inequity in education by, maybe giving people more choice, maybe having some vouchers, maybe having school choice. These are radical ideas, are they not? So radical that the left has to go out and slam them and lie about them, etc. Anyway, go check out my friends over at 25truth.org. There's a lot of intimidation going on right now. As we look at these final days, I think they're trying to make it clear to you that, you cannot vote for Trump if you're Latino, if you're Hispanic, as I said, Latino, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so a guy named Mark Cuban, who you may know from Shark Tank, you may also know of him because of Dallas Mavericks. It's sort of funny. He was like a big DEI champion. And do you remember when Mark Cuban was like, oh, we need more diversity, equity, and inclusion? And people are like, okay, so are you going to put short little females on your Mavericks team? Right? At some point, it's about who can get it in the hoop. And that's what we lose sight of here. I mean, if you want to actually try and create better inclusion, to use that word, I don't love the word, but in society, all right, what do? You start dealing with it at a younger level. You start trying to fix things so that people have more choice in school. You start trying to help families to stay together rather than seemingly drive them apart. Don't forget Black Lives Matter and how much they wanted to destroy the nuclear family. None of that stuff really works. If you really want the best society possible, you're going to do everything you can to reward the qualities that help get us there. And yet these guys have some other agenda entirely. And so I'm looking at some of the intimidation tactics that Mark Cuban has put in place, or for example, the ladies on The View are putting in place, and I'm really troubled by them. I mean, can we say communist? Right? Here's Mark Cuban talking about how no intelligent woman can actually be around Donald Trump, which I do believe he sort of single-handedly managed to insult all women, everywhere, all women, because who needs that kind of sentiment? I mean, by the way, there's a ton of super, 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 super smart women that are probably going to be part of this administration. And I think there's plenty of smart women in the Republican Party, but this is where they're going? Come on, Mark.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple.
So in other words, if you're a dummy, you'll vote for Donald Trump. Do you see what they're trying to do over and over? By the way, that's completely, again, really bonkers. Melania speaks more languages than you, buddy. All right? And Ivanka is one sharp cookie, and these are the women he's related to. There are plenty of brilliant women in that administration, the former administration, and plenty of brilliant women that will be going back in. But they're trying to tell you that you are dumb, that you are an idiot if you happen to be female and support him. There's something pretty messed up about that. But it may actually tell you they got nothing. They got nothing. So what are they doing? They're trying to intimidate you into voting for the gal they want. Because right now, half the country has no interest in her. This is just the New York Times Siena poll. I'm not even getting to the prediction markets or to Nate Silver's model. This is just the pure old poll coming out of the New York Times Siena. No, half the country wants nothing to do. Half the country is on record with the pollsters saying we don't want anything to do with her. And you're going to now insult women? Just like Biden's insulting everyone that's on the different side of the aisle? I mean, are you guys really that misinformed? You live in that much of a bubble, do you, Mark? Well, Whoopi Goldberg, she's right there with you. Whoopi Goldberg, ladies and gentlemen, really embarrassing herself yet again on The View today. I mean, it's an awful show. I'm sorry it's on television. I don't think it will be on for long. I do think at some point ABC News is going to be sold by Disney. And the minute you get a private equity shop in there, or the minute you get, they talked about News Nation potentially buying it, that would be Nexstar. Any of these players, they're going to say, we need to slash costs, which means Whoopi, see you later. See you later. But in the meantime, right, we have to deal with this. So Whoopi Goldberg totally embarrassing herself because she somehow thinks that comedians should not be allowed to say certain things. I mean, she's just taken our First Amendment and humor and thrown it all out the window. Watch her.
My generation fought tooth and nail so that you would not have to hear that kind of speak again.
Rhetoric, yeah.
You would not have to hear or be. We fought to make sure. We fought and said to people, if you're a stand-up, the only comic that can hit everybody really is Don Rickles. You're the only one who gets to do that. But everybody else has to be better and smarter and funnier.
Well, he was hilarious, too.
Well,
this guy's not even funny.
But that's the point.
He's not.
That's the point. But my other point is, just know we fought to make sure you couldn't do that. Talk about women. Talk to women the way people are talking. Talk to men. Talking to gay folks. Talking to anybody who is different visually. You didn't get to say stuff to them like that. Now folks have lost their mind.
Okay, so the comedian is not allowed to joke about specific groups, but the president can call an entire group, half the country, garbage. Like, just so we're clear on this, right? Like, just so we understand what we're talking about. Yeah, she embarrassed herself. If you're a comedian, you should be a little like me, right? What am I? First Amendment, First Amendment, First Amendment. As a journalist, as a commentator who has an opinion, I care deeply about our First Amendment. If I'm a comedian, what do you think I care about the First Amendment? Because if you can't have a sense of humor about things, which clearly this woman cannot, then what? She's a terrible comedian. I never liked her. Never, ever, 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 ever liked her. And by the way, she's super crude, okay? And she does make fun of groups. For her to sit there and say that she fought to make sure that that couldn't happen, that people couldn't tell jokes, it's like you're betraying your entire profession, lady. It's like I'm coming out saying I want to get rid of the First Amendment because journalists, I'm going to fight against it because I think the state should control everything we think and say. Quick reminder to go over to 76 Research, our financial website, where you can get a whole lot of information about financial markets and what stocks we like to invest in. Lots of different content there. Just a quick look at our top financial pick, up 24%, utility up 24%, real estate up 23%. You get the picture. It's important to put yourself and your financial future first. You can do that at 76 Research, just $1. It costs just $1 with code word dollar, $1 a month for the first 2 months. 76research.com. I'll see you there. By the way, that's my baby. Just so you guys know, I started that company with a dear friend, Rob Horton, who's a brilliant stock picker. The portfolios are doing really well. I encourage you to go and just, if nothing else, sign up for the free stuff at 76research.com. Get the emails, sign up for the free stuff. We just came out with a new note yesterday afternoon. I'm actually going to post that on Twitter and LinkedIn everywhere because it's an important note. You should hear about it. It's a company that we like very much, that we consider an interesting play on the AI space. It's not the NVIDIA, right? Or the obvious obvious pick, but it's one that should benefit. So I just want to flag that for you. But back to Whoopi for a moment, because to me, you've got a First Amendment. As a journalist, what do? You want to protect that First Amendment. If you're a comedian, likewise, you should want to protect it, lady, whether a guy's funny or not. The bottom line is he has every right to tell a joke. If it falls flat, it falls flat. But he's in the business of telling jokes. And I went back and looked at some of his other stuff, and, he makes fun of all kinds of groups. I believe that night he actually made fun of Jews as well. And nobody's freaking out about that. I wonder why. Here we go.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right. Okay. We're getting there. Again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody.
Okay, so that's the thing that she's flipping out of. I mean, I think her time has come to exit stage left, literally left. Go more left, okay? You go do that over in some other universe, Whoopi. Because Americans are kind of over it. I can't believe the show's on television still. Again, it's bleeding. I'm sure it's hemorrhaging cash, but it'll go. Trust me. Eventually it will go. I think Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, is probably waiting until after the election, but I'm pretty sure he wants to sell that thing and sell it fast. Reminder to subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. We have big news coming out of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruling today in a way that conservatives see as a very positive thing for the country. They want to make sure that those who are registered to vote but are not here in the country legally cannot actually vote in this election. I mean, hey, I'm going to go out on a really crazy limb and say, isn't that controversial? I mean, you're illegal and you can't vote in the election. Oh my gosh, heaven forbid. I mean, that's how crazy this thing is, because when I go and look at all the headlines, and I looked at all of them today, I'm like, why are they presenting it like this? Read this headline, you guys. Supreme Court allows Virginia to purge voter rolls ahead of election. So they're flipping out, they're freaking out in the mainstream media. How dare they purge the voter rolls of people that aren't here legally? Like, that's the punchline. They're not telling you that. They're just giving you, oh my gosh, they want to remove people from the voter rolls. I mean, Texas went and did this. They got rid of nearly 1 million people that were there that had moved out of Texas, or that maybe were not in the country legally. I mean, I don't know how you could possibly expect to vote, or why the Democrats are expecting people to vote if they're not here legally. Sharing with you from the NBC News story, the Supreme Court allowed Republican officials in Virginia to revive a plan aimed at removing non-citizen voters from the rolls ahead of next week's election. See the way that's written? The way that Supreme Court on Wednesday allowed Republican officials in Virginia to revive a plan aimed at removing non-citizen voters from the rolls ahead of next week's election. Duh! I mean, of course you should be removing non-citizens from the voter rolls ahead of the election. Shouldn't that be kind of obvious? But apparently it's not, because you're not allowing some people to vote. Anyway, in this case, basically the Republicans were like, gee, if you're not a citizen, maybe you shouldn't be on our voting rolls. How is this controversial? In all seriousness, I'm like, what kind of alternative universe are we living in? Anyway, Supreme Court came out today and said, yep, basically you are going to be able to take these people off of the voter rolls. Thank goodness. Here's Glenn Youngkin, smart guy, business background. I like that. He's the governor of Virginia. Let's listen to him earlier on Fox today talking about what a win this is. Heaven forbid.
Your reaction to this Supreme Court decision?
Well, Brett, it's a big win for common sense and for the Constitution. I'm, of course, very pleased with the Supreme Court's ruling, and it affirms the fact that the process we're going through, in fact, isn't a purge. This is a process that we've been using for 18 years. When someone walks into a DMV, they identify themselves as a non-citizen. They have ended up on our voting rolls either by happenstance or by purpose. We go through a very clear process. You get a notice, you get 14 days to affirm you're a citizen, and if you don't, you come off the voter rolls. And of course, in Virginia, we have the ultimate fail-safe that you can same-day register and cast a provisional ballot. So everyone who is a U.S. citizen in Virginia can vote, and I encourage everybody, go vote. But this is a win for common sense and a win for the Constitution today.
You've heard.
And yet, when you read the headlines, it's as though it's a bad thing. I mean, they're all worked up about this. No, we don't want people that aren't actually citizens and taxpayers in this country voting in our elections. Right? We don't actually want people coming in illegally. Dare I say that? I mean, can't you be for immigration, but against illegal immigration? This is a crazy upside down world. I mean, I never considered myself that far right. I really didn't. I'm kind of like, I'm a pretty level-headed person. I'm sort of middle of the road, but I'm like crazy right, apparently. You're crazy right if you actually think that non-citizens should be purged from the voting rolls. You're crazy right if you actually think the electoral college still matters. You're crazy right if you think you shouldn't call half the population garbage. I mean, this is crazy talk. I think we know who the crazies are here. Just saying, okay? I think we know. And one of them happens to be AOC. AOC, she wants you to know that Dougie Boy, he could be the first gentleman of the United States of America if Kamala Harris were to win. Well, AOC just thinks that Doug Emhoff is the bomb. Okay, she thinks that this guy is the be-all, end-all. It kind of reminds me of Jen Psaki, because she's out there just gushing over Dougie Boy. He's the ideal man, brimming with masculinity. I mean, AOC, I guess you don't get out much, huh? No, she must not. I mean, if that's this lady's version of a man, I think she needs some help. You know, I don't know what the dating situation is like with the kids these days, but Doug Emhoff would not be, in my estimation, worthy of being anybody's go-to. And I mean, I'm just going to cite the nanny example because I guess that one's been, has that been admitted to? He allegedly had an affair with the nanny, the kid's nanny, and he broke up his marriage over it, and apparently impregnated her. I mean, it gets detailed in a way that I just simply don't want to have to go. Like, don't even want to have to talk about it. But Dougie is ideal. He's like brimming with masculinity. Are you kidding me? On top of that, there's this really bad allegation against him, and the woman who allegedly was hit by him on a red carpet event came out and gave a very detailed account of what allegedly, reportedly transpired to the Daily Mail. And it's not pretty. Like, this is not who anybody should emulate. Ever. And yet he's a hottie. Jen Psaki thinks the same thing. Are you kidding me?
Important part, an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's the...
My dad was like, okay. Knowing what we know now, that did not age well. That really, really did not age well. But yes, AOC thinks that he's the ideal representation of masculinity. And she said this at a Las Vegas campaign event just within the last 24 hours. I'm going to quote here from AOC. He's not afraid to embody and pass on these values of security and this idea that you can let your girl shine. And he embodies that really well. We should all be really, really proud of him. He just embodies masculinity. Okay, so like, let's start at ground zero. Part of being a really good husband is being a faithful husband. Okay, it means you're not taking up with the nanny as Doug allegedly did. Enough said. Enough said. This is not who we admire. Thank you very much. I mean, you can support your wife and her career. Terrific. Fine. Like, that's great. You should. Just don't take up with the nanny. All right. All right. Here we go.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women. Ever. It's just that simple.
You know, that's actually kind of an important soundbite in light of what Jen Psaki and AOC are saying. Because it's like women are allowing themselves to be dumped on over and over again. It's like the sports thing, right? Somehow, if you're an enlightened woman, you're supposed to be okay with turning over your first place swimming medal to somebody who was born a man. Like, why do we have to keep taking it? Why are we holding Doug Emhoff, who took up with the nanny, up as somebody that we should all want to marry one day? Okay, like, why are we allowing the men to take all the trophies and the ribbons and, by the way, destroy effectively Title IX? I mean, I'm getting tired of it. I'm really tired of it. And it's because of women like Jen Psaki and women like AOC and then the Mark Cubans of the world that want to shame you for daring to care about yourself and wanting to speak up for yourself. They want to shame you for that. It's because of that girls aren't getting the same opportunities as they did before.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women. Ever.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
It's not that simple. It's not that simple. There's something going on here. You guys are deliberately trying to divide the sexes in a massive way, and you have a whole group of women that are willing, sadly, I guess, the AOCs of the world to get themselves canceled. Or maybe they don't want to be canceled, but they're willing to cancel out all other women out there if it means more power for them. Think about it. This has been a wild campaign season, hasn't it? One of my acquaintances, good guy, who actually produces Benny Johnson's show, ALX. You should follow him on Twitter. He's got some good stuff. He tweeted this out last night. I retweeted it. I'm like, gosh, there will never be a campaign like this again. Enjoy it, right? Never. Like, this is the campaign of all campaigns. We should actually put a video reel together of this, because you think about the assassination attempt, you think about the mugshot and the jail. I mean, I was here with you live that night, just as he was getting booked. Fannie Willis, she's going down in flames. Anyway, the McDonald's thing, the trucking thing, it's one thing after another. I mean, it's just epic, sort of legendary when you think about it. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? That's the big question. I sat down just a minute ago with one of the folks over at AFP, because they've been doing all kinds of things at the ground level to get the word out and to make sure that Republicans are registered to vote. I wanted to get his take on where we are right now. Listen. Well, that didn't go as planned. Here we go. We'll try again. Listen. Joining me right now with a more in-depth look at the races we should really be watching and where he thinks his team has had a big impact. We have Brett Garner. He's from AFP, Americans for Prosperity. Great to see you. And wow, I mean, there's a lot going on. We're in the 11th hour, if you would. And I know you've been pounding the pavement and you got a great grassroots organization there at AFP. Where do you think you guys are having the most impact? Which states we should start with?
Yeah, no, I thanks for having me on, first of all. But look, I think across the 7 races that we're engaged in, there's no doubt that I can now say more than 15 million voters that we have had outreach with, we're having a big impact. Certainly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, Montana, Nevada. I mean, across the country, we're having an impact. These folks and these conversations that we're having across the country have yielded, I think, really significant gains for the candidates in the 7 Senate races we're engaged in, the 44 House races that we're engaged in, and the more than 640 races that we're engaged in nationwide.
It's incredible. One of the historic problems with the Republican Party is that they really haven't been so active on the early voting front. And I will compliment Democrats and say, wow, they had a heck of a ground game, right? And they always had a heck of a ground game, and they were very organized and very systematic about it. A lot of Republicans look at that and they're like, oh, it's some form of cheating, this, that, and the other. I'm like, hang on. You know what? Because two can play that game. And we can have a good ground game too. And that's what you guys have been focused on. Will that make the difference?
I think it'll be part of making the difference. I mean, ultimately, people should choose the method that gives them the best opportunity to ensure that they actually vote, which is why our conversations with the doors, driveways, and on phone calls isn't about, are you going to vote? Because saying you're going to vote is different than having a plan to vote. And that's why we go that extra step and make sure that they do. And whether
when you say that, what do you mean? Just, do you have a ride? What are you doing that day? Are you getting off work early?
That's right. So that's true if you're voting in person, but also making sure they're aware of those opportunities you talked about, which is to be able to go in and vote early in person, to request an absentee ballot if you need one. Those opportunities across the board, the vote counts the same. So it's about finding a way to match up the opportunity that's best for the person just to ensure that their vote's counted.
It's amazing. It seems so easy, right? And I live in a small New England town. But when I first moved here, I had to ask, where do you go to vote? Turns out it's at the local school, and that's why school is closed on election day. But, you got to find these things out, and you can go on the internet, you can ask friends. But when you talk about the plan to vote, I think it's important to think about all those people that maybe don't take the time to go on the internet or don't take the time to ask their friends and maybe don't even know those basics.
Yeah, that's right. And I think ultimately you've got folks who vote in every election that have got a sense of that. But there's a number of folks who maybe don't vote in every election. And so the opportunity to reach out to the base, to swing voters, to anyone who you think is going to go out there and do the right thing and give them the information that they need on how to vote. Make sure they have a plan on how to vote. Make sure they're connected to folks if they need a ride to vote. Okay. Regardless, just make sure they've worked through that plan because this race is
vote. It's super important.
Yeah.
With that in mind, and again, knowing what you guys have done on the ground, you mentioned Nevada. Talk to me about, for example, Pennsylvania, because that's a biggie. If the Republicans take Pennsylvania, I think the Republicans are in really, really good shape. But what are the most important races to you? I know from a state side, also from a Senate side.
Yeah, Trish. So just the other day, we crossed 1 million doors in Pennsylvania. The opportunity to have that kind of mobilization on the ground is making a difference for sure. And that's not the only place. I mean, look, across the country, whether it's the race in Montana, where we've done more than 650,000 doors, it's going to make a difference in these critical states that add up to the types of majorities that we're going to need in the chambers and the type of activations that we're going to need to see to have Republicans who can go out there, pursue good policy, and push back against the worst ideas here in Washington.
I know there's lots of bad ideas, lots and lots and lots of bad ideas. And we'll be talking to you on the other side of the election about that. But, I guess just in the here and now, it's like, what happens? It's hard to make predictions. Do you have any sort of gut instinct on what we're going to see? I keep going to Polymarket, and there's another couple prediction markets out there as well. What we're seeing, and given my stock market investing background, I tend to default to some of this stuff, not just prediction markets, but even the internals of the market overall. And it looks as though the market is gearing up for something. The market is gearing up for a Donald Trump win. The market is gearing up, I think, for some upside within the House and Senate as well. Your take?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks today that have optimism, but I'd caution against optimism. Optimism is a wonderful thing to feel in your heart, but at the end of the day, this race is going to be extremely close across the board. For all of these races, they're margin races. And if you see numbers today and anchor to those, you're probably not going to be looking at the right thing, because what matters is campaigns and folks who run through the tape on election day. It's going to be about who actually makes it to the polls. And so, well, I think the thing to look at to give optimism is the trend lines of where we've seen so many of these folks go in raising their name ID, understanding where they are in those critical issues like inflation, like the crisis at the border. I think campaigns and individuals who run right through that tape on election day, that's going to be the folks who win. And I think there are some good signs there. But it's important for them to not take their foot off the gas all the way through.
No, I say that, like, you don't want to get too far out over your skis. You don't want to be too optimistic about this. And look, anything can happen, and we need to be prepared for that. But to your point, the ground game matters, and a lot of that work was done ahead of time. I'm looking at, for example, what we saw in Pennsylvania. I was just talking to my friend Dave Buss. He was out on the bus the other day with the whole Trump team there, and he's like, this is incredible. Like, we've whittled down, we've knocked it more than in half, right? The advantage that the Democrats used to have. You guys, by knocking on 1 million doors in one place and 650,000, I didn't even know they had 650,000 in Montana. Did you say Montana?
I did. We've knocked through the
That's
population.
a lot of doors to find in Montana.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I think could make all the difference. You're getting people registered. You needed to get people registered. And so now in this final moment, it's making sure that there's some follow through and that they get out there.
Yeah, Trish, we're a platform that gives folks an opportunity who want to get engaged. You don't hit those numbers if there's not energy within the groups of folks that want to get active on solving the problems in our country. So it's great to hit those kind of numbers, but it's also a sign of people who've been really badly impacted by the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, who want to go out there and see this election as an inflection point to take this country in a better direction.
Wow. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of that. A lot of it. So thanks for everything you guys are doing over at AFP. I just want to encourage the viewers, if they want to get involved, you've got a great grassroots effort there all over the country, and people can be part of this today. Go to americansforprosperity.org. Brent, thank you for your time. We're going to have you on to talk about this on the other side, because there's going to be, I think, a lot of policy issues that are coming up and that people are passionate about and care about. You mentioned inflation. You mentioned the border. I know we've spoken before about healthcare with the folks over at AFP. There's a lot of stuff out there that needs to be, quote unquote, reformed, shall we say, reformed and fixed and made better. So we look forward to talking to you about those ideas. In the meantime, we'll see what happens on Tuesday.
Sounds great. We'll see you on the other side.
Thanks so much, Brett Gardner. My thanks to Brent. I mean, it's really going to be very, very interesting. Just a reminder to everyone, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be live on Tuesday night, and we're going to be looking at all the results as they come in real time, and I'll be providing you with all of my analysis of where we are. It's going to come down to some biggies, right? Pennsylvania obviously being one, Michigan. You know, I'm looking very, very closely at Georgia. Some people are getting a little bit nervous about Georgia right now. Again, like, we're going to wait and see. I think the important thing here is they did do the ground game. So they did the work they needed to ahead of time. And the other thing you got to keep in mind is how bad people are really hurting. I mean, it's not insignificant. Let me see if I can find you this, because I want to show you just what Kamala is really up against in terms of the inflation challenge and problems that we're seeing in the likes of so many of these swing states. It's really, really significant, remarkable, and I think something that you've got to keep in perspective. In 2020, as you think about where we were, in 2020, you had an economy that was coming out of having been in a bad spot, right? With having been shut down, et cetera. And I don't think they ever should have shut it down, period. But now when I look at things today, we were actually in a different and perhaps better spot than we are now. Here you are looking at battleground state inflation, where you've got Nevada up 22.21%, Arizona up 22.1%, North Carolina up 21.8%, Georgia up 21.8%. You've got Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan all seeing between 19 and 20% increases in inflation. And listen, guys, that hurts. It really hurts. And when you think back to other elections that are in some ways somewhat similar, I go back to the 70s and Carter and the gas lines and the inflation. People don't take this well. You can look all around the world. I've done a lot of analysis on this, especially down in Latin America. One of the most painful things that people to this day will talk about in places like Brazil is actually inflation. Inflation is like such a dirty word because they know how bad it is and they know how hard it is to get out from under. In Argentina, why do you think Milei got in there? Javier Milei won. I mean, in part, he's quite the character. I mean, although Trump has nothing on him with the garbage truck. But Milei's quite the character. And one of the reasons that he won that was because inflation was so out of control. The economic situation was so miserable. And one of the ways you combat it, of course, is to look at something like investing in gold. Nice little segue to one of our show sponsors. Go to trishlovesgold.com to learn more about how you can get up to $15,000 in free silver from American Hartford Gold. You can text my name, Trish, to 65532. Text Trish to 65532 today. The number's 1-844-495-1115. Learn more about it. But, this is a nice segue. I like it when I can do it and have that kind of synergy. But the reality is simply this. It doesn't change. We are in a really treacherous economic time. And we can't afford to keep taking people in over the border that we don't even know are here. We can't afford all the programs, economic programs that requires, all the safety programs that requires. And people get it. I mean, you just go back to that graphic I showed you. You got inflation soaring all over the country, especially in these swing states. It's part of the reason why the Teamsters so definitively came out against Kamala Harris. I mean, they'll try and tell you it's sexism, it's this, it's that. No, I mean, it's a couple things. One, the economy stinks. And two, while they may have been okay with Joe Biden, they're not okay with being force-fed somebody, and it could have been anyone. It could have been Pete Buttigieg. They wouldn't have gone for him just because he's a guy, right? Like I'm bringing that up. They wouldn't have gone for him either because they had voted for Joe. And you took that vote away from them and you slipped in Kamala. And it doesn't play in Peoria. Like literally, she'll be lucky to win Illinois. Quick reminder to go over to 76 Research, our financial website, where you can get a whole lot of information about financial markets and what stocks we like to invest in. Lots of different content there. Just a quick look at our top financial pick, up 24%, utility up 24%, real estate up 23%. You get the picture. It's important to put yourself and your financial future first. You can do that at 76 Research, just $1. It costs just $1 with code word dollar, $1 a month for the first 2 months. 76research.com. I'll see you there. Indeed, I will. Indeed, I will. I will see you there for sure. Guys, I mean, this is inflation city. But I'm looking at the internals in the market. And while we're seeing some challenges today, while we are seeing those, and that's in part because some of the tech earnings, buy on the rumors, sell on the news, I think overall, the picture is one of a belief that Donald Trump is going to win this thing. Really and truly. I mean, I'm looking at Microsoft having a tough day because of its disappointing forecast. It's heading for its worst day, possibly in 2 years after disappointing forecast. Look, I mean, I think that Wall Street had an anticipation of one thing, they got another, and they don't like the forecast. All that said, I'm a big believer in technology long term. I really am. And Microsoft is not one of our holdings in the model portfolios. I don't believe, but I do believe in the tech picture, long-term growth for technology. I really do. I think that it's going to be actually revolutionary, and we've just started. So we want the right people there, the right people in charge in order to help us the most. I want to go out to some comments here, as again, we are in a live show, and I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I encourage you, Don was saying in the beginning to everybody, make sure that you like, because it does actually help the algorithm, believe it or not. The reactions matter. You can say something in the live chat below. I'm happy to hear your comments. I really do appreciate everybody being here. And again, as I look at all your comments and reactions, I'm so happy that we have some of the same people coming back. Although I see some new folks. I see some, like a Phoenix Rider. I don't think I've seen you before. Hey, so welcome. Peace of mind. Good to see you back here. I so appreciate it. Rocco Media, perhaps new to our group, who wants higher taxes, gas prices, higher energy prices, and open borders. Like, listen, I don't think I'm that far out on a limb saying I don't think that stuff is going to work. Mike Costa, good to see you back here. Mainstream media, he says, saying the election is close all the time. He thinks it's total BS. Yeah, I, again, am looking at market internals. I'm looking at prediction markets. I think that you have to take these polls with a grain of salt because I don't think people are entirely truthful. I think the mainstream media, by the way, is very involved in the polling. You saw the news about some ABC affiliate, did you not? That was trying to run through its demos of graphics. And they actually had something that was predicting Pennsylvania. Everybody's like, oh, see, it's a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. They were actually probably just running through their graphics. And maybe that was a scenario that they were hoping for in the control room. But I do think that they are embedded. Okay, so while it may not be conspiracy level, like they're absolutely deliberately manipulating polls, etc., I do think that they're very invested in having Kamala Harris win. They want her to win. They hate Donald Trump. They're nervous about their future. They shouldn't be, honestly. Like, it's great for their future. They have no future without Donald Trump. Do you think that The View would even still be on TV if it weren't for Donald? What would they talk about every day? Seriously, what would they? It would be so darn boring. CNN, MSNBC, they get nothing. They get nothing to talk about. He's suddenly made politics exciting. You know, maybe too exciting for some, but it certainly beats the alternative. I mean, when was the last time? Think about it. When was the last time you had somebody out there doing this?
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
It really speaks for itself. I mean, I'll tell you this. They can't compete with that. He's got a sophistication when it comes to understanding what the average people kind of want and what the media wants. He's got a sophistication that is so far above and beyond anything that they could ever dream up in the White House. And by the way, he makes things happen. That wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. They had to track down the garbage truck. They had to put the Trump sign all over it. They had to coordinate him being there. But they made it all happen because he had the intuition, so to speak, to say, Joe Biden, you effed up. You effed up. But I'm going to make hay out of all this trash. I'm going to make hay out of all your garbage. And I'm going to make sure that nobody forgets it. Kamala Harris can't do that. KJP isn't going to come up with those ideas. There's a level of talent there. I can say this, right? As one performer, so to speak, to another. There is a level of talent and imagination that you do not see in the Democrat Party right now. This is kind of like a once-in-a-generation thing. This is a crazy election. And he may just win the whole darn thing. It's good to see you all. Billy Lynn, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Do not forget, you need to subscribe. Do me the favor of telling your friends about the show. We're here live every single day. I'm going to be here live on election night for you too. Subscribe. Go over to the podcast, the audio podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and meet me there as well. I'll see you back here live on the show tomorrow. And happy Halloween. I got to go be Catwoman.